Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. So, I'm gonna tell you a little story here, and it's gonna just be great. So, a couple years ago, I was talking to one of my friend's daughters, and I made the comment that if you are always on the defense, there will always be something for you to defend yourself against. And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, that's really smart." And I was like, "Thanks." Just came up with that on the fly based off of what we were talking about. But it is so true, right? Like, how many of us, and the beauty of all of this is actually there's a great book out there. I forget the name of the author, but it's called Unoffendable. And he talks about how so many of us are just ready, like, to attack anything because we're constantly on the defense waiting for someone to offend us, right? And if you're waiting for someone to offend you, you're going to see all of these comments through a different lens in which you're going to get offended by it, right? Like, if you go into a situation, prime example, okay? I was at my daughter's soccer game this weekend, okay? I've been reflecting on this situation, and I can see both of the perspectives, and I am taking ownership for myself in this. Let me just be very clear about that. So this past weekend, we played a soccer team that we had played a couple weeks ago. And a couple weeks ago, there was a parent on the sideline who yelled at my child, called her out in the middle of the game, kind of a situation. And my 10-year-old came off of the soccer court in tears because this adult had yelled at her, right? And I have always said, like, I will never engage with an opposing parent unless they yell at my kid, right? If you are yelling directly at my kid, there's a chance we're going to have a conversation. And so the coach came up to me after the game. She had seen it happen in real time and told me about it. So I went up to the group of parents and I said, she had pointed out to a couple of parents, and so I walked up to the man first and I said, "Did you yell at my kid during the game?" And he goes, "No." And I kind of addressed the whole group of opposing parents and I said, "There was someone who yelled at number 9 on the field. Who was it?" And I was very calm, right? Like, as calm as I could be, even though internally I was raging inside, right? Like, someone yelled at my 10-year-old kid. Mama Bear was ready to come out. So being as calm as I can in the situation, I said, "Someone yelled at my child." And there was a mom who said, "Yeah, that was me." And I looked her straight in the eyes and I said, "We don't yell at the children." And she started to express that my kid was being really physical and all these other things, right? And I looked at her very plainly and I said, "It was a very physical game for both teams." I said, "But we do not yell at the children. My child came off the field in tears because there were parents yelling directly at her. We don't do that." And she said that she would apologize, and she did apologize to my 10-year-old in front of her peers. And that was it. We walked out of the facility, right? Well, we played that team again today, or this past weekend. And I'm sure emotions were high, right? I had called them out for being rude to a child, and they probably were on the defense. I don't know. There was probably a lot of maybe there was no conversation had when I left the scene, or maybe they, talked behind my back. I have no idea, no clue whatsoever, right? So during this game, the game is very physical again, and my kid gets shoved in the back, like back foul. If you've never played soccer, when you would hit someone from behind, it is not a good foul, right? Like, it usually ends up in a yellow card. So it's a very blatant foul when you come from behind and hit somebody that way. My kid had been hit from behind. My husband and I jump up at probably the same exact time that the referee blew the whistle and called the foul. But my husband and I, our voices had already echoed, had already yelled, and we yelled a generality. Both of us were like, come on, right? Like something along those lines. But it was not directed at a child. It was not really directed at anybody. It was just, come on, right? Like that kind of a thing. A mom from the opposing side starts to scream at me. To sit down, to stop talking, all the things, right? I will be very honest with you. My emotions went through the roof, and I don't recall exactly what came out of my mouth, but I know it was nothing that I regretted. She starts screaming at me, and I said, that's my kid. And she says, it's my kid too. I said, mine's on the ground, so please stop. She kept yelling. I said, stop. She kept yelling. I said, stop. And then the man that I had approached the week before initially, he gets involved, starts screaming at me as well. And now my husband is involved because there's a strange man screaming at his wife. I would hope he would get involved, right? So now in a matter of seconds, both of the benches are screaming at each other. I don't recall who actually settled it down. But I know I did not start it. I did not engage with these parents. Were they on the defense? Yes, probably. So they could have been, right? Again, I don't know, speaking from experience. They may have been on the defense and just been waiting for me to, quote unquote, slip up. I did have a conversation with the coach afterwards, and I said, listen, I'm not trying to be like a crappy sideline parent. I'm actually working on being a better parent. Can we have this honest conversation about it? And she said, honestly, you're a stressful parent. She was like, but I know that you're passionate about it. And I know that if my kid got laid out like that, yeah, I would probably react as well. And she said, and actually, I do need to say that I didn't see it all happen. She said, so I really did think that you started it. I was like, okay, cool, fine. Like, I didn't, but okay. And as I reflected on it, I could honestly see the other team's perspective, right? Like, yeah, I wanted to take the moral high ground and be like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. This is you. This is all your fault, right? However, I can see how in that setting, it may have seemed like I was yelling at her child. I was not. I don't yell at the children. There are two things that I refuse to do at soccer games, and that is yell at children and engage with opposing parents. I just will not. I will get up and I will walk to the end of the field. I will walk away if I feel like my emotions are starting to get the best of me. I will remove myself from the situations. I literally call it a timeout. I will quite literally give myself a timeout if I feel like I'm going to say something that I would regret later. Take myself out of the situation. I sit down, I calm myself, and I come back when I can only yell encouraging things. Now, I say all of that because if you feel like the whole world is out to get you, you're going to constantly be on the defense, and the whole world is going to feel like they're out to get you. Period. And so how do you remove yourself from being on the defense all the time, right? Like, and this can be a bit more challenging, especially for women, if you've been subject to any kind of questionable, scary situation that has involved a man, right? It can be hard to put your guard down because you feel like you have to protect yourself all the time, because the one time that you didn't protect yourself, this happened. And so now you're constantly on guard because you're afraid of getting hurt, of the thing happening, of whatever it is, right? And that actually does a lot of damage to your nervous system. Just in general, we're not going to go totally down that route, but that does a lot of damage to your nervous system and your body in general if you're constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like if you're constantly in that kind of adrenaline rush, it's going to do a number on your body. And so how do you start to get yourself out of this defensive mode? Well, as I tell anyone in any situation, if they're going to change it, the only way you can change it is if you first become aware of it. And so that's why I had a conversation. I actually had several conversations with a number of people this weekend saying, hey, like, is it me? Am I the problem on the sideline? Is there a target on my back? Is there something I'm doing? How can I be better so that I'm not getting yelled at and screamed at and these parents are engaging with me? And I asked those hard questions of people. And I said, I want you to be honest with me. Like, is there something about me? Because I seem to, my girlfriend, she was like, well, you're the common denominator. Let's look at this. And I said, okay. And she said, well, I've never been to a soccer game with you, but I know you well enough that you're probably quite passionate, and that can irritate the crap out of other people. She said, now I'm not suggesting that you stop being passionate, but maybe at the same time, you need to, get a gauge of it. And what I have found is that if I'm closer to the midfield where the opposing team is sitting, it tends to get them riled up more just by me yelling and encouraging. I will also be very clear at that. I do a lot of encouraging because I want to be present in the game. And so I encourage now instead of like, oh my God, you missed the ball, right? Like I don't. I'm like, oh yeah, come on. Oh, get the ball. Yes. Oh, great, right? Like get back on defense. Oh, great. Like I talk. And maybe that irritates people. But I found that if I sit farther away from the opposing team, my protection level for myself isn't as high. And so I try to kind of sit away from them so that I don't feel like I have to protect and defend myself, right? Because if their comments start to get nasty, then I sometimes by default start to counter those comments, essentially, right? So one is awareness, creating awareness around the thing, right? And I will never forget, we were at a soccer game and my oldest daughter was playing. It was a middle school game. I think she was in like 7th grade. And the team that they were playing, every time they scored a goal, mind you, we were getting, just dominated. Our butts were getting whooped. But every time those girls scored a goal, their celebrations got more and more and more and more obnoxious. And I started to feel for my girls, for my daughter on the field specifically. And I felt myself start to want to yell at this child. And I got up and walked away. I literally left the field and sat in the car for a few minutes by myself. And on the way home, or later that night, my husband looked at me and he said, do you know how embarrassing that is? That you had to get up and leave the field because you were going to yell at a child? And I looked at him and I said, first off, I didn't yell at a child. I left the field before I yelled at a child because could you imagine how embarrassing that would have been for you had I yelled at the child with you next to me? So one, I removed myself from the situation before I did something truly embarrassing. I said, but two, just because you're not this loud at the soccer field does not mean you don't do it on the basketball court. And he got real quiet real quick. And it wasn't in an attempt to essentially hurt my husband, but to draw his attention to the situation where he was calling me out on something that he was also guilty of. And so I just put it in perspective. And there have been many conversations where we've had after soccer games where I have said, listen, I'm going to holler and I'm going to yell, and I don't want to be corrected on the sideline. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and that's fine, but I'm going to eat the fact that I'm wrong. But I also am passionate on the sideline. So Let me be passionate on the sideline and it'll be okay. I'm not saying anything awful. Okay? Because there have been times where I have said, not, I mean, I've been obnoxious, let me just put it that way, towards some referees. And I have apologized at the end of games to those referees. And that conversation has gone, I am truly sorry that I let my emotions get the best of me. How can I be a better sideline parent? And I had one referee who we see a lot, see him in a lot of our games, and he said to me very plainly, he said, I don't mind you yelling. Like, you can yell all you want. Parents are going to yell. He said, my problem is when you personally attack us, where it becomes, you did this, you're blind, you did that, you did this, you did whatever. And I said, thank you. Like, I appreciate you telling me, and now I can modify. And so, I mean, I even had this instance where it was a very young referee, and it was my youngest daughter's soccer game. She was 6, right? And there was a foul right by the sideline. And just very, very calmly, I said, that's a foul. Just like that, right? And this young referee looked at me and said, another word out of your mouth, and that's a yellow card. And I looked at my husband, and I looked at the mom that was next to me, and I was speechless. I was like, what just happened? Like, and they were both confused because it wasn't like I had said it nasty. It was just very calm. And so after the game, I walked up to this young ref, and from a distance I said, I'm not here to bother you. I said, I just have a question. Like literally like come in peace kind of a situation. And so I walked up to him and I said, first off, thank you so much for the refereeing that you do on the field, right? Like, I know there's a lot of parents who can be really like rude and nasty to you. And I want to thank you for refereeing first and foremost. I said, I just have a question because I'm trying to be a better sideline parent and I'm trying to still be engaged in the game without being nasty, like without offending people, essentially. I said, so what prompted you to threaten me with a yellow card? And he said, there's other refs that will throw you out the second you say anything. And I kind of dug in a little bit and I said, well, what was it? Was it my tone? Was it what I called out? Like, what was it that made you want to say that to me? And he couldn't really articulate it, which is fine. He's young. But it also gave me a bit more empathy when it comes to these things. And, there are, again, I am not perfect. I am getting better. And I am asking the hard questions here. But I really, really want to just start to open your eyes to, like, are you choosing to be offended by something that has nothing to do with you? Because oftentimes the thing that's happening and the way someone reacts is more, the way someone responds is more reactionary than it is intentional, because most of our day is reactionary. We're simply doing the things that we have done in the past before, just kind of on repeat. And so not everybody is aware of their reaction to something. And so it really does wonders for you when you can learn to not be offended by everything that everybody else does. It's okay for them to respond without you taking offense to it. It honestly, 99% of the time, probably has nothing to do with you. right? It's like when you get mad at your husband because he left socks on the ground in the bedroom, right? It's probably not the socks that you're pissed off about. It's probably the fact that you've asked him about the socks before, and this isn't the first time, and now it's bringing up this wound about how you feel like you're not being heard. It's probably not about the socks. But this is how we all kind of operate, where we get on the defense because somebody has said or done or comment, like there's been something that has actually brought up a wound in us that we then get to look at and decide how to move forward. And so when you find yourself being offended by something, that gives you an opportunity to look at that thing. Just like I did this past weekend. I looked at it. I was like, okay, well, I could understand why she might think that I yelled at her kids. She probably didn't know what I said. And I was reacting to my kid on the ground, nothing about her kid. But if I didn't have all the facts, I may have reacted that way. So am I upset with her? No, I don't care. Like, the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me. Did it put a bad taste in my mouth with that league? Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to play with those parents, against those parents again. So, you got the inner workings. A little breakdown of soccer coming up. I'm excited for soccer season. This is my life. Part of my life. Being on the soccer field with my kids. But I encourage you, like if you are listening to this podcast, this YouTube, you are someone who's in the personal development, self-development world. If you're not willing to ask yourself the hard questions or ask people that you know for honest feedback, you can't actually be open to change. Because that other perspective is going to be really, really powerful. And that's what I do with my clients. I ask those hard questions and I give them a different perspective. And I do that in the private coaching and in the single breakthrough sessions as well. If that is something that you're looking for, if you're looking for another perspective because maybe you're feeling stuck, maybe you're feeling burnt out, maybe you feel like there's got to be another way for this to work out. I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'd love to give you another perspective, really give you a breakthrough opportunity here. So you can reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram, Stephanie Snyder, Ph.D., or head over to my website, stephaniesnyderphd.com, where you can connect with me, shoot me an email, send me a DM. I would love to have a conversation with you. That's how we change, is through conversations. So I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And as always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye.